Hello, you mighty man cave maltsters, and thank you to Mika for that malt mention, introducing Ralphie Review 973 extras. An extras review is additional, useful, practical information that if you're a whiskey drinker, bourbon drinker, rum drinker, cognac drinker, if you sip rather than gulp any spirits from around the world, wherever you may be, whatever your circumstances, you're going to get more out of it because I'm sharing my experience to help you empower your experience. It's a simple equation, a simple formula, and I'm still allowed to do it. I haven't been barred, banished, or banned by the authorities yet, so fingers crossed it won't happen for another few years. Will probably happen eventually because opinions are dangerous. So this review, it's not particularly dangerous. It's the fact that I've just reviewed a fairly obscure single cask whisky which you're unlikely to find, but the point is you still need to be aware of it. I still need to bring it to your attention so that when you do encounter an unusual bottling in your travels, you're in a better position to appraise its true value and decide whether it's worth buying. Because the thing is, when we come across the unknown and unfamiliar, it's the human instinct to be risk averse and to stick with the familiar. So when we see the usual standard accessible available drams like Glenfiddich and Macallan and Glenlivet and Highland Park and that sort of stuff, Glenmorangie, you know, we can say, aha, I know what it's going to taste like, I'm going to get a bottle of that because I know what to expect. Now the problem is that as time goes on you become increasingly disappointed. And the reason is simple. It's the familiarity with what's familiar. It's the fact that we're risk averse. It's part of the human condition. You know, it's instinctive because it's part of survival. Don't take chances. Don't risk these exotic flavours, these different brands, because I might be disappointed. Well, the chances are you might not. In fact, it's once you taste better delivered whiskies or any other spirits that you start to become more disappointed with what you used to take for granted as products that you actually enjoyed. And I want to take this opportunity in this extras to explain to you one reason why at a fairly early stage in your whiskey journey, the whiskies that used to, or the spirits that used to be quite rewarding to you no longer are. And it's to do with the human brain. I'll hold this close, so you might even want to take a screen grab of this. It's up to yourself. It's the way we analyse whiskey. The way we analyse whiskey is not through our senses. No, that's a myth. It's an understandable mistake that people make because our senses are simply the tools that our body has for gathering information. Our tongue, our smell, doesn't actually do the analysing. It does the interpretation and redelivery of the experience. So when we smell something, our smell receptors, which are chemoreceptors at the top of our nose underneath our brain, they transfer the information into the brain to be analysed, interpreted, understood, and then delivered as information back to our senses. So it's a kind of 360-degree cycle. When we smell something, we smell through our nose, because you don't smell through your mouth unless your mouth breathing up via your nose, which isn't that easy to do really properly. But it starts as a smell experience onto the olfactory blanket at the top of our nose, and then it goes into the brain And our brain consists of two halves. The left hemisphere, and the right hemisphere, as illustrated here. Now, the way the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere interpret the information being delivered by the sense of smell and the sense of taste are different. And when we're inexperienced, there's very little exchange of information ambiently between the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. So when we start with whiskey, we'll have our first sip and we're all full left side. We're analysing, we're looking at the logic of taste. In other words, this tastes of apple, this tastes of vanilla, this tastes of sherry, raisins, toffee, lemon, pineapple. And we extend visual ideas as a result of our left hemisphere of the brain. We examine the facts of the whiskey closely. What's the bottling strength? What's the condition of the bottling strength? Is it 40%, 43, 46, 50 or higher? Because this gives us some rational, logical information which relates specifically to what we're smelling and tasting. And then we do the maths. We do the rational, logical conclusion that because it tastes a certain way, that it's a good cask, a good whiskey, it's a clean experience, it's rational, it's logical. And do you know what? When you go out and first buy a bottle of whiskey, that's where you start, because that's where we all start, by rational analysis. Once we're about 5 or 6 whiskies in and our rational left side is becoming intoxicated, our right side, the emotional, creative, complex emotional visual side of our brain starts to kick over. Because after a few drams in of our whiskey, we say, do you know, I'm really, really enjoying this, but I'm not quite sure why. Or this reminds me of, oh my goodness, I'm 4 whiskies into this Glenlivet and reminds me of a summer day in Italy. Do you remember that holiday we were on? That's the way the conversation goes, because the right side of the brain here, the other hemisphere, is calculating things in a different style. It's interpreting the information through smell and through taste differently. So you get the creativity, the intuition, the arts, the feelings, the imagination, the irrational, the suggestive, the emotional. That's all the right side of the brain. And this is one reason why we get confused with whiskey in the early years, is because there becomes a kind of conflict between the right and the left brain, because they don't have the practical experience of time-served apprenticeship, of sipping whiskey, smelling whiskey and other quality spirits over a number of years. You cannot rush this, because if you go too fast, you miss the scenery and the journey. So we've got to take it slowly, we've got to take it quietly, we've got to take a steady journey here. But over time, you will find that the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain come together more successfully. So as much as we analyse the whiskey, we analyse with intuition. As much as we look at the logic of what we are tasting, we're aware of the creation and the creativity in parallel, in tandem, in synchronicity. When we look at the maths of our dram, does the age statement all add up? We do so with the intuition of our imagination and feeling. And this gives us a more rounded, holistic and greater empowered interpretation of enjoyment. We don't rationalise it. We don't overthink it. We just go with the flow as a result, because of the ambient super senses that we have been practicing and developing over the years, of bringing our left hemisphere and right hemisphere more together more in synchronicity, more in conjunction. This is when we're getting more out of the whisky or whatever spirits we happen to be engaging with. And one of the reasons that happens is because of intoxication. Seriously. You don't have to be drunk to be no longer sober. Alcohol is like a small grenade going off in our brains. And our brains start to get slightly confused. And you will find, with time, that the finest whiskies that you ever drink in a session are not the ones you start with and not the ones you finish with. They're the ones where you're halfway through or 3/4 through your session and you just hit that bliss point, that perfect moment where your left hemisphere and right hemisphere are coming together and working together subconsciously, empowered by ambient toxicity of being pished. Not overtly drunk, not uncontrollably drunk, not in the pub on a Friday night drunk, but just gently non-sober. And that's the perfect position to be in, where you're past your first and your second dram. It's your third dram, the one before your last dram. This is where you put the best dram of the evening. Because inevitably, in your last dram, usually a peated one, but not always, you get to the stage you're no longer sipping, you're just chugging. Because it's human instinct, and I defy you to tell me it's not true. What I want you to take away from this, I want you to take away the knowledge and self-awareness that you have in yourself and that everybody should have in themselves, is that the best point at which to really get the full event of a really good whiskey that you've paid good money for and that you've got great expectations for. And where do you place it in your whiskey evening? Where do you position it? And where do you get the best out of it? And that is where you've got the experience where your left brain and your right side of the brain, the two hemispheres, actually get brought together by this background physical intoxication element, which gives you your heightened superpowers of interpretation of both smell and taste, so as that not only are you getting a good dram, your brain's getting it. Not just you're getting it off the label, not just you're getting it because you've been told you're getting it because you're in that perfect pitch place to respond to it through the interpretation, rationally and irrationally, logically and illogically, through our brain. Our brain is essentially our senses, because we have no senses without our brain. That's why brain health is so important. So look out your lion's mane mushroom. You'll find it as a herbal supplement. It's very good for you. There's more knowledge about looking after your brain, because when we look after our brains, we look after our bodies. End of. Hope you've enjoyed this. A little bit different, I think. And cheers, malt mates. Here's to another malt moment. Here's to another review. Won't be far away now. Look at that haze. Look at that Scotch mist. Sign of a good dram. Oh, wonderful little mocha toffee moment there. Delicious.